We had Donald Trump, I think, on Sunday making some interesting comments about Bitcoin, calling it a scam, but calling it a scam in a very interesting way. And I believe we have the tape.
My opinion is that with the currency of this world should be the dollar. And I don't think we should have all of the Bitcoins of the world out there. I think they should regulate them very, very high. But the currency should be the dollar. And when you have things like that out there, Stuart, you know, what happens is you really lose something. It takes the edge off of the dollar and the importance of the dollar. Bitcoin, it just seems like a scam. I don't like it because it's another currency competing against the dollar. Essentially, it's a currency competing against the dollar.
Now, what's interesting about this is we've heard Bitcoin called a scam a million times, right? But here, Trump is not really using the word scam in the way that we think of it. He's saying it's bad because it competes with the dollar. And that's actually kind of an endorsement, right? This is what Bitcoiners want people to think. There are a couple of reads on Trump that are relevant here. One is that he's very susceptible to influence. So he's heard this. He's heard from somewhere that Bitcoin is a competitor to the dollar, and he's repeating it. And that gets that narrative out there in a way that, frankly, even though he's saying it as a negative, I would say good for Bitcoin. And the other point that somebody made was that, he's very prone to saying the quiet part loud, right? That's a read on Trump that goes for a lot of different things. And here, a lot of the criticism about Bitcoin, I think we can actually say has been, inaccurate. Like, it's not the real problem. He's identifying the real problem that people find, which is that it's a competitor to the dollar. Adam, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, so this is an element that I really love about Trump, which is that quiet part loud thing, right? Like, when you look at Janet Yellen's comments, right, and you look at other officials' comments, they talk about things that aren't real problems, right? If you're concerned about terrorist financing, it's very easy to say, oh, well, that's why we need to do something about Bitcoin. But the reality is, even by the Fed's own statistics, most terrorist financing happens in US dollars, and there's no real conversation about getting rid of that. Really, this currency competition angle, this currency competition angle really is the thing that members of the US government and, frankly, governments around the world don't like, because Bitcoin presents an alternative that can't be stopped through conventional sanctions. It basically kind of takes the control out of their hands. Now, if you're responsible for the continuity of the US government and the kind of way that things work right now, as empowered by the US dollar as a global reserve currency, that's pretty scary. And the more real Bitcoin gets, kind of the more of a threat it becomes. So that's kind of the way that I read these comments. So Ben, what about you?
I mean, two sides of the same coin maybe, but I'm holding Musk and I'm holding Trump up here at like side by side in terms of the deep and nuanced understanding around Bitcoin. I think particularly I kind of chuckled at Trump saying, all those Bitcoins out there in the world, we gotta take them down. Bitcoins, it's like, exactly. And just shows kind of a fundamental lack of understanding in this issue. David, I think your kind of read on the framing of this is maybe the interesting thing in regards to, it being a competitor to the dollar and that being the point of consternation now, not just like, this thing is a scam or this thing is, totally useless or something like that. Like, that could be where a lot of that frustration comes from. That being said, on the flip side of this, we talked about the market not moving in regards to El Salvador. I'm very happy it did not move based on these comments, because, it's definitely not something that should be pushing the price one way or the other. But Naomi, what you got?
Yeah, just to add on to David's point about saying the quiet part loud, the first time we saw that was 2019, when Brad Sherman said in Congress, and everyone in the Bitcoin community was like, did he just say that out loud? Like, does he know that he said that out loud? He says, if Bitcoin does achieve its objectives and perhaps displaces the US dollar or interferes with the US money being virtually the sole currency in the world, then, that's a problem. And the fact that he was like actually saying it, like the issue, is it will succeed, and the result of that will be it will displace the US dollar, and that's our major concern. It was such an enlightening moment because everyone in crypto knew that, everyone in Bitcoin knew that, but the politicians were beating around the bush, as both you and Ben mentioned, David. And so it's interesting now that Trump is coming out and saying the same thing. I wonder whether we're going to, just see an increase in politicians feeling okay with like maybe jumping on the bandwagon bandwagon saying, well, no, this is the reason why we need the US dollar as the world reserve currency and all of this, or whether, they will kind of sweep that narrative under the rug and keep doing the environmental things, the drug dealer things, the, OFAC sanction list, all of that stuff. But Nate, what are your thoughts?
I have to say that it's a little laughable that Donald Trump says that he cares about the strength of the U.S. dollar in terms of just a little laughable in terms of like last year I was speaking to Lebanese economists about how the Lebanese pound was being devalued, and part of it was because of the politicization of the central bank and it had no independence, and Donald Trump was notorious for threatening the independence of the U.S. Federal Reserve. So it seems very unbelievable to me that Donald Trump actually cares about the strength of the dollar.
He was also a big fan of regulation, right, Nate?
Go ahead.
I just want to quickly correct, those comments were made today. So they actually do seem to maybe have been in response to what happened in El Salvador. But I saw Adam's hand.
So, I mean, the whole thing here is this competition element, right? It's that if you there's a Streisand effect here that happens too. If the conversation becomes around the idea that Bitcoin something should happen to it as a result of it competing with and potentially eventually displacing the US dollar, then that requires a conversation around why the US dollar has this role in the first place, should it have it? And that's not a conversation that anybody on that side of the table actually wants to have. So to the degree that becomes the conversation, that becomes a problematic conversation for these governments to pursue.
In which fundamentally it's about power, right? That's what all of these conversations are about. Politics, all of this. That's the reason Trump is weighing in on this, is because it's about fundamental power dynamics, and that's why people care. So at the root of all of this is power and control and lots of interesting dynamics that are going to continue to be on the table.